North to south, coast to coast, around the world, this is the Wells Report. Hi, my name is John David Wells. We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary, which is not news. Commentary is opinion, both yours and mine. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. If you've been watching the economic news this morning, you have noticed that in some words of some people reporting this story, the American economy continues to defy gravity. I don't know where that comes from. Maybe we'll learn together here as we read this New York Times article. Job growth jumped in May, reaffirming the labor market's vigor despite a swirl of economic hardship. U.S. employers added 339,000 jobs on a seasonally adjusted basis, according to the Labor Department. That's an increase from the revised total of 294,000 in April. And so what we can expect is the president to take a victory lap today regarding that. He will be speaking later on today. Job growth jumped. And this is what everybody is saying about it. Michael D. Scheer, President Biden hailed the jobs report, saying in a statement, today's a good day for the American economy and American workers. He said the report brings the total number of jobs created while he was president to 13 million. President Biden also said his statement that he plans to sign the debt ceiling legislation passed last night, saying the agreement protects our historic and hard-earned economic recovery, and that the progress that American workers have made in the last 2 years. Ben Castleman, how can job growth accelerate while unemployment rate rises? The two figures come from different surveys. One of businesses, the source of monthly payroll figures. One of households, the source of unemployment rate. Over time, the two typically tell consistent stories, but they can diverge in any given month. Often that divergence is nothing more than noise, but sometimes it reflects something real happening in the economy. That's because the two surveys measured different things. The survey of households includes gig workers and other people doing non-traditional jobs that are not counted in the traditional business survey. That appears to be what happened last month. Unincorporated self-employment, which includes gig workers, independent contractors, some small businesses fell by 369,000. That's the third straight monthly decrease. Now, that was borne out in an article by Forbes magazine today that seems very interesting. The monthly Bureau of Labor Statistics employment record contains data from two separate surveys, one of household and workers, the other of employers. Today's report shows the two surveys moving in very different directions. The payroll growth numbers, which generally receive the most attention, were far stronger than anticipated. Total payrolls rose by 339,000. That's a figure almost twice as high as what was expected. Substantial job growth occurred in professional services, healthcare, leisure, and hospitality, and government. Construction employment rose by less, about 25,000, indicating the bite of higher interest rates, while manufacturing payrolls were quite flat. Also, wage growth continued to be fairly strong on an annualized basis. They rose by 4% for all workers, around 6% for production and non-supervisory employees. Then Forbes points this out. Still, despite the surprising strength, the household data pointed to weakness. The unemployment rate rose 0.3 percentage points to 3.7%. Still very low, but nonetheless, it did rise when the other index was going a different direction. So it's really hard to see all these jobs being created, but unemployment rising. I believe this is a statistical wobble and nothing more. The number of job losers rose by 318,000. So when you look at all this, 20,000 net jobs for May. Now, I'm not naysaying the numbers. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to point out that there are some very interesting rubrics. There are some very interesting details in this that point different directions. It's almost like suddenly the economy is in this sort of strangely weird weather pattern where winds are changing and shifting constantly, even minute by minute. In any given month, it's not unusual for the two surveys to point in different directions. Over several months, they're usually more consistent. Still, this is a serious divergence. With payroll data suggesting a roaring labor market, the household data showing some slowing. Earlier this week, we also saw mixed numbers in the job openings data. Job vacancies rose to over 6% again, while worker quits continued to decline, suggesting less optimism on their part. The strong payroll growth may well convince the Fed to keep raising interest rates until they see clearer signs of job and wage growth slowing. But the household data suggests some slowing has been occurring, and we should carefully watch that for more in the coming months. So, good jobs data today. Good jobs data today, but still, you can't turn away from the interesting thing about the households having trouble when the businesses are adding jobs. So, where does that come from? Where does it come from? Gary says it's all smoke and mirrors fished in by former presidents and his group of people making decisions for the Biden administration. Maybe. One of the problems with this particular circumstance is that we then look at the various presidential administrations who massage data and change the reporting paradigm and do a lot of different things that are kind of strange. They're just kind of strange. You know, for example, during the Obama years, the people that had just quit looking for jobs were not counted in the unemployment numbers. And so that has happened before. And it looks as though maybe some of that is happening again. And this is another reason why the executive branch agencies need to settle down and just do their jobs and stop playing politics. Because politics brings lies. And with lies brings mistrust. And with mistrust comes conspiracy theory. And with conspiracy comes chaos. And with chaos comes change. Some of that good, some of it not so good. What we, the people, have to keep in mind is this. These numbers are scattered. They're scattered. And while 339,000 people finding jobs, even though 318,000 or 319,000 left the job force for a net gain of 20,000 jobs, the numbers are pointing the right direction. And these incremental steps might lead to something better. And then there's one more caveat, one of Gary Olivier's favorite words. There's one more caveat to this. The caveat to this comes in the form of us being in a position where we are being told that the economy's better, but we still don't see it in our pocketbooks. We're not seeing it in our monthly budgets. We're not seeing it at least in among the people that I talk about or talk to. And so when I talk about all these numbers being skewed for political purposes, we must demand that stop. We must demand that people stop playing politics in executive branch agencies. If they want to run for politics, they want to run for office, run for office. If you want to be a part of the government bureaucracy that actually keeps the country running, then do that and commit to the actual mission of your agency. Politics poisons everything. It disconnects us from reality. And the people of the United States are beginning to realize at some great cost just exactly what that means to this society. If we don't get this handled, if we don't get this very understandable, reasonable federal government, then we are headed toward a very serious fall. And the only way to do that is to send the government an unmistakable lesson and message. And that unmistakable message is, you're not the right people, we're finding new ones. Because the people that are astute in politics will realize that the cheese is moving in the business parlance. In other words, things are changing. The marketplace is different. This is something that American politics has sought to just plain ignore. But in the information age, in the age where someone like me can talk to someone like you about something like this, they cannot schmooze us, if you will. They can't use the statistical razzmatazz. What they have to do is they have to really deal in fact. And I got to be perfectly honest with you. When people like me start analyzing all this stuff, we're looking at it from the same point of view that you look at it from. What's the real data? Is it so arcane and so technical we couldn't understand it if it was actually there in front of us? Maybe. But maybe what we need to do is we need to figure out what all that language means. I don't like it when all these major indexes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics point different directions. Businesses adding jobs, households having trouble. 339,000 jobs up, 318,000 jobs down. Victory laps being taken for what reason? And once again, the statistic that is very, very difficult to find is how many jobs actually lost during the COVID era and how many jobs have been reconstructed. Is it true indeed that the Biden administration has created a climate that is building jobs in the United States? Or, in the same way that these job increase numbers seem to be defying gravity, has the gravity of people just saying, hey, we need a workforce back after COVID and just plain hiring? In other words, have we replaced the jobs we've lost? Finding those statistics is not easy, which tells you a little bit more about something else we fight with in this nation, the willingness to not just have the government massaging all of these statistics for political effect, but the mainstream media refusing to report the actual facts in favor of schmoozing the people like us with their news to try to create a different agenda. Now, once again, I'm not poo-pooing these numbers at all. I think it's fascinating. I think it's absolutely fascinating that jobs are being created left, right, and center, but the households aren't having a good time of it. At least Forbes pointed that out today in very, very well-written, easy-to-understand language. I mean, you got a chance to go to Forbes, go do it. Because that's a great, great magazine. Steve Forbes has been on this broadcast an unbelievable number of times in his very gentle way, in his very, very educated and urbane way of describing all of these things in clearly understandable terms. And he does so with his magazine. Jobs up. Are you feeling better? Do you have a better job today? If you do, let me know. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. You got a new job? You making more money? Good for you. Tell us about it. Tell us what you see. Is this the scattered upset of something about to be in a position where it loses control? Are we in a position where the Fed, seeing this job growth, now rethinks its capability of raising interest rates yet again to try to force a bit of a recession onto the United States economy in order to keep inflation down? This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will be back in 4 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 3 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. You can certainly join us to chat with us, to debate, news analysis, commentary, and debate. It's what we do. Looking at the chat room today. Let's see. Let me go to Poker Monkey, who says everybody knows we're just hanging by a thread. The economy is in the toilet thanks to leftist policies reversing everything Trump did. It boggles the mind. Gary Olivier says it's all smoke and mirrors fished in by the former president of the United States, Barack Obama. Fred says we've grown used to living on an economy that is smoke and mirrors. Let's see. Replace the jobs at MCDs we lost. I guess I don't know what he's talking about when he says MCDs. Replace the jobs at MCDs we lost. The real data paints a much bleaker picture. The career politicians can't have that. Remember, as summer descends on us, many places have summer seasonal jobs, hence jobs created. Once again, that harkens back to something that Mark Twain said. Mark Twain used to say it this way. He used to say there are lies, there are damn lies, and there are statistics. And so that's what we're dealing with here. And once again, we're trying to read the tea leaves. And especially when the tea leaves point divergent directions, where are we? Now, what do you say is, well, okay, so all things being considered, no problem. In other words, these numbers will settle down as time passes. Well, maybe. Fred Teed also points out that these are lower paying jobs. Maybe. It also said something else. You remember in the USA Today article, it talked about how the gig economy was expanding. It may be indeed. It may be that the gig economy is expanding because people are, say, for example, becoming Uber drivers or becoming delivery drivers in order to make ends meet in their budget, which is being hurt badly by inflation. This is the Wells Report. Good morning. Who's this?
It's Gary calling from Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Hello, Gary from Fort Polk, Louisiana. What are you doing, man?
I'm just keep on keeping on, and as our generation used to say. More importantly, how are you and all the viewers today?
Oh, we're doing good. I don't know about all the viewers, but we'll have to ask them. Eric Mann says say hello. So Gary, say hello.
Hello.
Hello, Eric. Love you, man. Okay. So when you see all these tea leaves pointing different directions, what do you see, Gary?
Well, I mean, let's face it. Just a couple of things to preface it with. We have, summer seasonal jobs. That's across the country. So right away, there's going to be an uptick on people needing, folks to work. Hence, we've all these jobs have been created. That's seasonal. And that going back, every president for the last 50 years has, spouted on about, that job creation. Those are seasonal. Number one. Number two, it's regional. New York State doesn't have. There's just no jobs up there. You get 60 miles beyond New York City and everything's a meth lab. I mean, it's bad, no joke. So they're creating a thing where they're going to pretty much seal all the felons' records when they get out of prison, and then now we're going to have a labor force. Well, you don't have any labor there, so I mean that's all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
The point I'm getting at is it's smoke and mirrors. You can't rely on any of these polls because they all have a stake in the game somewhere. Just the current president, his approval rating. Does anybody really believe that his approval rating is high as it is?
Yeah. Thanks very much, Gary. I appreciate it. And this takes us back to the credibility of the executive branch agencies. They've damaged their credibility by playing politics. We've got to be able to trust those agencies to do their jobs. Are they? I can make whatever observation I want to, but what I'm interested in is, do you believe the executive branch agencies are doing their job, or are they trying to play politics? This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will be back in 4 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 3 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for watching today. Tell your friends about this broadcast. If you would like to support it, head over to Patreon. You can make a donation to this effort as we try to bring you real news. Honest, fair, real. It's the Wells Report. Former President Donald Trump appeared on Sean Hannity's show yesterday. He'll be on again today as they extended the time the former president had to answer questions from voters in Iowa. It was a very friendly crowd. So you need to keep that in mind. I found it interesting that Fox News would do something like this, especially with Sean Hannity, who is a Trump partisan. So the bias is built in. USA Today reports what happened this way. Former President Donald Trump combined two familiar venues, Sean Hannity's talk show and the state of Iowa, to lay out campaign themes, particularly attacks on Joe Biden, a variety of criminal prosecutors, and Republican challenger Ron DeSantis. Now, before we go any further with this, what I want you to do is, we talk about pointing out bias on this broadcast. The bias on this particular article starts at the headline. It goes like this: Donald Trump's Iowa town hall, attacks on Ron DeSantis, Joe Biden, and criminal charges. There have been no criminal charges leveled against Donald Trump. There are criminal investigations. Did Donald Trump indeed, did he actually break the law? But there have been no criminal charges. And even the first paragraph of this article belies is it a lie? In the headline of this piece. Former President Donald Trump on yesterday, combined two familiar venues, Sean Hannity's talk show, The State of Iowa, to lay out campaign themes, particularly attacks on President Joe Biden, a variety of criminal prosecutors, not a variety of criminal charges. There have been no charges leveled. There's an awful lot of talk of criminal charges about to be leveled. There's an awful lot of talk of possible indictments. But so far, nothing has happened. And so that bias, that particular, could it be mean-spirited, anti-Trump bias? Once again, talks to you just a little bit about the agenda of USA Today. So let's talk about what Trump had to say. In the article, it says, quote, "I really go after the one who's second," he said during a friendly town hall at Clive, Iowa, located near Des Moines. A week after DeSantis officially entered the race, Trump also referenced the importance of the Iowa caucuses, protested the litany of investigations into his past. This is what USA Today believes you need to know about it. Cheered on by an enthusiastic pro-Trump crowd, the ex-president repeatedly mangled DeSantis' name, joked about the recent run-in with a reporter, and indicated he would continue to attack the Florida governor for as long as he stays competitive in the Republican nomination race. I don't think he's going to be second that much longer. I think he's going to be third or fourth. Well, that's possible. There's also something else. At this particular moment, Donald Trump enjoys a 40% lead over Ron DeSantis, somewhere in that vicinity. That's huge. That will get closer. That will get closer. Ron DeSantis is something that represents something that we need to be aware of. He is a professional politician, and he is a Republican. A professional politician will say the right thing at the right moment for the right political reason. And Donald Trump's stump speeching is filled with that stuff. And two, he's a Republican. What do we know about Republicans? We know they talk a good game, but when it comes down to actually producing results, not so much. Now, the question is this. With all of the polarizing anti-Trump garbage flying around the nation, no one has been treated as badly. Certainly no former president. Not even Richard Nixon has been treated this badly. When it comes to federal agencies literally breaking the law, violating the Constitution to try to get something on Donald Trump that they have failed to do. And so we see these local prosecutors trying to do their best to, I don't know, what are they trying to do? They're local prosecutors. New York City may be the biggest city in the United States, but you know what? It's still just a local town. Same thing with Fulton County, Georgia. Those are the two prosecutors that are going after them. Why are these minnows going after this shark? Well, I'll tell you why. Because the sharks failed. The sharks failed in trying to nail President Trump with something. So now what's going on? This is the smaller group of people in much smaller jobs without any of the resources the U.S. government brought to bear on Donald Trump. And are they going to be able to wedge something into the state code, something into even a local code to be able to try to besmirch Donald Trump? Maybe. Do you believe that the American people will actually believe it? Do you think the American people will actually believe that this is anything more than what is beginning to look like a more and more desperate attempt to try to take down a former president? A173792172, A173792172. So Donald Trump is creating a pretty good sized field of people around him. We talked about that earlier this week. Trump mocked some of his other opponents during the town hall, citing low polling numbers for challengers like former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, who declared, what was it, yesterday? He's at zero. Well, no kidding. Former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, who is a guy who absolutely represents the neocon wing of the Republican Party. If you liked what Mitch McConnell does, Asa Hutchinson is your guy. That's just my opinion. I don't understand what they're doing. Earlier in the day, DeSantis told a New Hampshire radio show that Trump's name-calling is turning off voters. Is it? Is it? I wish President Trump had a little bit more discipline in his messaging. He doesn't need to punch down. He doesn't need to punch down. What he needs to do is rise above all of this. rise above all of this, point to his record. It's undeniable. Undeniable. Not only is it undeniable, but just point at what happened after he left office. What happened in this nation from a standpoint of economic growth? Undeniable. Yesterday, for example, I went and bought myself a tank of gas. I normally buy Chevron gas, but it's too expensive. So I went to my second choice for fuel in my cars, and that's Quick Trip, which is a really good convenience chain that has gas stations. Very, very good. They really run their shops well. And I paid twice per gallon for gasoline than I paid during the Trump administration. You know, this is what the households are dealing with. This is what the households are dealing with. When the United States flooded the world market with petroleum, the prices crashed, including the ones we pay. Sub $2 a gallon gasoline? I never thought I was ever going to see that again. But once again, here we are in a circumstance where we decided to raise fuel costs. We brought this up on the Wells Report when it was happening. With fuel costs rising, with energy costs rising, the middle class hurts more. Also, the government reaps more tax revenue. So when they say, no, we're absolutely not going to tax the middle class, of course they are. They're just going to do it a different way. They're going to do it in some way that is no overt tax raise. What they're going to do is they're going to raise taxes another way by making it more necessary for you to spend more of your monthly budget so that they can create more tax revenue. I mean, is it cynical? Yeah. It's cynical. Absolutely cynical. Is it a lie? Well, if Donald Trump was president and this was happening, yeah, it would be a lie. But who defines lies? The mainstream media playing politics. Anything that falls out of Donald Trump's mouth is a lie. Anything that falls out of Joe Biden's mouth is, well, easily explainable, and it's simply a nuance that you don't understand. Oh, really? Because I paid nearly $100 for a tank of gas? I don't understand that? Of course I understand it. Of course I understand it. It's outrageous. But this is where we find ourselves, and we have a chance to do something about it. Will we? Will we find our way to realizing that the political class of this nation, many of whom are just open about the fact that they're better than you, they know more than you need to just shut up and do what we tell you because you're not smart enough to actually to make the right decisions. And I'll tell you something else. You're in a position here where if you like being told what to do, you must love what's going on. If you like being manipulated for political effect, you must enjoy every bit of this. Is that true? Is that true? Clearly, we have the wrong people in our government. We must do something about it. If you're a Democrat, just vote for a different Democrat. Try to vote for one that's also an American, as opposed to being a progressive or a liberal or what have you. Just vote for an American Democrat. They're out there. Find them. If you're a Republican, you need to find somebody that's actually going to do something instead of just talking. Yak, 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 yak. Yak, yak, yak. That speaks well, by the way, for Ron DeSantis. He's actually done something in Florida. He's actually made a difference in that state. And a lot of people like what he's done. Asa Hutchinson? Who's he? Chris Christie? Chris, you're running for president? What for? Getting turned aside once wasn't enough, although I have to say that during the debates, Chris Christie was amazing. So I'm glad he's running for president if for only one reason. The statements he will make What he excuse me while I choke to death. The statements he will make during the debates and the people he will focus those statements on, they will serve only to make the debates better and only to make the candidates themselves better. Because let me tell you something. Chris Christie is brilliant. Is he a president? Only the American people know. So far, they've said no. But is he someone that should be there speaking? Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I'm waiting for the rest of the people to start talking. I want to know what Nikki Haley has to say. I haven't heard from her a lot lately. That may be because she's considering whether or not she wants to be a vice president. That might be why we haven't heard much from her. But there are an awful lot of people here that need to be in this conversation. She's one of them as well. But when it comes right down to it, somebody said something a while back that is absolutely true. When Democrats are in trouble politically, they close ranks. When Republicans are in trouble politically, they seek to blame the person responsible and execute them on the spot. It's a circular firing squad. Is that what we're going to see in this primary season? Only time will tell. Only time will tell. DeSantis went on to say about name calling, I think it's so petty. I think it's so juvenile. I don't think that's what voters want. Honestly, I think his conduct, which he's been doing for years now, is one of the reasons why he's not in the White House. Do you agree? That's a great question, by the way. Let's ask it. Since we do those things on this Wells Report, let's go ahead and ask that question. Is Donald Trump's personal style the reason he's not in the White House? Yes or no? And why? Yes or no, and why? Ron DeSantis says that Donald Trump is rude, crude, and socially unacceptable. That's why he's not in the White House. Well, he's certainly all those things. But is that why he lost to Joe Biden? 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. It's Friday. After this one, only 2 more days left in the work week. You know, I used to say that as kind of some wry humor, but now that I have a day job, oh man, it's absolutely true. I'll be working tomorrow and Sunday. But it's okay. I'm working. That's what I'm doing. I'm working. It's fun too. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Stick around. We'll be right back. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to The Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. This is John David speaking in front of a turned-down microphone. This is the Wells Report. Hi. Friday in progress. Yeah, Friday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend planned. I don't know what I'm going to be doing in between times that I'm working, but whatever it is, I'm sure it's going to be fun. I hope yours will be too. Taking a look at the chat room where people come to debate. It seems as though a lot of people were listening to an awful lot about what we said about polling in the last couple of days. I believe that the polls are rigged for a political purpose, says Fred. Gary Olivier says they're rigged to fit their agenda and for who is putting money in their pockets. It's not so much the money in their pockets things, but their agenda, yeah. Scott Rasmussen of Rasmussen Reports, easily the most reliable poll throughout the last two election cycles. Just Blatt came out and said he's a Ron DeSantis guy. Well, how's his polling going to be anywhere close to fair, anywhere close to fair, if he's already declared who he's going to be supporting? The answer is nobody. Ashley Varner Haley has joined us. Hello, Ashley Varner. Are you there? Also, one of the sweetest people on the planet. Easton is with us today. It is so nice. Easton Kennedy has joined us. Hi, Easton. How are you? You having a good day? You doing what your mother says? Learning lots in your homeschooling class? Yeah. The Hamilton Kennedys, they homeschool their kids. And they are wonderful, smart, educated, engaged. They're good. It works. Let's see who else. Ashley Haley Varner says hi. Eric, thank you very much for that. That was very cool of you. What they say about Trump, Fred says he's not a politician. No, he's not. Politicians have shown over the decades that they're the wrong people to run this country. Why do we continue to let them? What are we doing? You know, I've actually got a lot of political friends. I really do. Major politicians have been on this broadcast. Some major politicians have actually criticized my criticism of politicians. If you want me to stop criticizing you as a politician, do better work. Do something about this national debt, or you're going to be out of a job. You know, if you're somebody that has all the best reasons and intentions in the world for spending $31.7 trillion, get out of office. Come up with a way to reduce that number. 5 trillion? 3 trillion? Something like that? And once again, I pointed out that Alexander Hamilton said that a little national debt is a good thing because it reins in congressional spending. Well, it doesn't, does it? So until huge national debt reins in congressional spending, then we reduce it down to zero if we can. We have to do this. And we have to have people in Washington that will do it. It does not have to be some draconian shutdown austerity plan from hell. It doesn't. As long as you and I keep working as hard as we do to be able to float this economy and this boat and all of these important things, we'll be fine. But we need to start the process. The simple one, not my idea. The simple one, every single government entity cut their budget by 10%. Find a way to make it happen. The Defense Department can save an immense amount of money by asking the Congress to break up these gigantic defense contractors. Make no mistake, the weaponry we have in these United States is ferociously expensive. It wasn't necessarily greed that caused these defense contractors to merge and form together. It was a matter of survival. McDonnell Douglas simply could not continue to do the work with the F-18 by itself because the actual expense of producing that fighter got out of the control of McDonnell Douglas, so they merged with Boeing. But what does that mean? Well, that means take it or leave it. The price for your F-16 landing gear strut is now $14 million. Oh, no, it's not. Oh, yes, it is. And so what ends up happening? You go out and grab an obsolete part from the boneyard in Arizona. Is that a better fighter or a worse one? These are the issues here. Getting back to the chat room, I think many moderates and independents walked away because of Donald Trump's personality. But now they have buyer's remorse, and it won't matter in this election. I think you might be right. I think that's a very good, astute observation. I think that's really good. I think the American people have seen that all the stories told about Donald Trump and his governing style and what he accomplished in office being nothing, all of that has been proven to be an absolute mischaracterization in one part and misdirection in the other. This country is not as in good a shape as it was in 2019. Unless you can find something that changes my mind. It's open. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. You can join the chat room, of course. This is the Wells Report, hour number 1 in the books. We'll be back with the second hour of this broadcast for this Friday. This is the second day of June, year of our Lord 2023. Thanks very much for joining us today. We'll be right back with more in just a moment. Thanks for listening to the Wells Report, more of which continues in 6 minutes. You found the Wells Report, more of which continues in 5 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will be back in 4 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 3 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. The next story I have to read to you and give to you courtesy of USA Today is at some level heartbreaking. And I've been trying to figure out exactly how to bring this to you. on one hand, I look at this and I see something that is truly and awfully sad. On the other hand, I look at this and find what really, in my view, should be something that there should be a gut check involved in. I thought long and hard this morning about playing this video. And I thought about it, and I decided that you need to see it. But I'm not happy about playing it because it's saddening. Let me show you what happened. This is the president handing out diplomas, falling down on stage at the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. He got back up and he pointed back at a device that was apparently a teleprompter. And that teleprompter indeed may have tripped him up. He said he got sandbagged. Let's talk a little bit about the actual article. President Joe Biden took a dramatic spill yesterday while handing out diplomas to graduates after giving the commencement address at the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. The president did not appear to sustain any injuries. He fell to a carpeted surface, which was good. There were gasps from the crowd following the fall, which came as he handed out the last diploma, forcing him to come down on his hands and knees. He was helped to his feet by Air Force officials, and Secret Service personnel appeared to trip on a black sandbag that was on the stairs. Biden, 80 years old, is the oldest president in U.S. history, seemed to be okay and continued to stand as the ceremony concluded a few minutes later. Ben LeBolt, White House communications director, said in a tweet, "He's fine. There was a sandbag on stage while he was shaking hands." Biden joked about the incident as he returned Thursday evening to the White House. "I got sandbagged," he said. He held up his arms, shouted to reporters with a smile before taking a slight skip when asked if he was feeling good. Biden was walking with no appreciable or visible limp. It's not the first time the President Biden has tumbled in the public spotlight. Last summer, he fell when he tried to get off of his bike at the end of a ride at Cape Henlopen State Park near his beach home in Delaware, but he said he wasn't hurt. He also tripped but collected himself while speeding up the stairs to board Air Force One. After Biden was elected in 2020, before his inauguration, Biden fractured his foot when he slipped and twisted an ankle playing with one of his dogs. That forced him to wear a walking boot for several weeks. The latest fall likely hands Republicans who have repeatedly questioned Biden's fitness to be president new material for future ads in the 2024 presidential election, after they already made President Biden's bicycle spill a go-to clip that has seen millions of replays. He actually fell down, former President Donald Trump said during a campaign event in Iowa when asked about President Biden. "Well, I hope he wasn't hurt." All of us feel the same way. We certainly hope that President Biden was not hurt. But he hit the ground pretty hard. He went on to reference the criticism he's received in 2020 for walking gingerly down a ramp during a graduation ceremony at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. He is now 76. He also appeared to have trouble bringing a glass of water to his mouth during a speech. You got to be careful about that because you don't want that, even if you have to tip a toe down the ramp. I suffered for that. They never covered my speech. True. I saw something in that video that I don't know that anybody beside a medical professional might see. His first step was unsure. I don't know whether he hit the sandbag because of that unsure step or whether he had that unsure step before he hit the sandbag. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is why in heaven's name was a sandbag there in the first place? Why was the president standing so close to it? Is it because as the graduates walked past, he essentially backed up in just a little bit? You sort of move around there for a while. I've been on stage a lot. Hitting your mark is incredibly important, not just from a standpoint of staging, but from a standpoint of safety. The people that are handling President Biden and his public appearances need to be more careful. When I talked about people having a gut check moment because of this, that's an awful lot of what I'm talking about here. The President of the United States is in very close proximity to having to be led around by the hand. Now, does that point to his fitness as a president? There was a president long ago who was an avid skier. He took a spill coming down a ski slope in Colorado. And President Gerald Ford was then portrayed by comedians all around the world as being incredibly clumsy, when he was indeed the exact opposite. He was a football player. He's an athlete. That may have been, everybody takes spills on ski slopes. It's just the way it is. You got two very long appendages on your feet, and sooner or later, you're going to hit just a little rut in a ski slope and you're going to fall down. That's just the way that is. But it took on a life of its own. Will this indeed be the case? No. No, because the comedians are all in the bag for the leftist agenda, and therefore they're not going to say anything. The only thing that I can say on this is that there are other people that need to have gut checks too. This is an elderly man. He can't take many more of these falls. Something is going to break. How close is President Joe Biden to a possibly life-injuring hip fracture? How close is he? Well, he's closer than I am. He's closer than you are. And what he's got here is he's got a bunch of people that need to realize that they've got to put things out of his way so he doesn't make these kinds of falls. He's going to get hurt here. He's going to get hurt. The reason I bring up the hip fracture is because I was looking at the way he fell down. Fell down on his left knee. That force transmits directly into his femur, which is pointed directly at his hip. And we don't know about his bones. We don't know about his bones. He's a small man. In other words, he doesn't carry a great deal of weight that would exacerbate any kind of a hip injury based on that fall. But I didn't like the way President Biden took his first step. It looks like he tripped on the second step, not the first one. He may have been going down when he turned, which would belie a balance issue. Now, that can be as simple as something in your inner ear. That might be the case. It might be something that has nothing to do with his mental acuity. But I remember the first time I saw President Biden walking across the lawn to Marine One. He shuffled. He didn't have the confident stride of a guy who has his physicality intact. Other people noticed that too. And that talks about actual brain function. Is it cognitive brain function? Well, as we all know, President Biden is a gaffe machine. He's always been a gaffe machine. I pointed that out while he was running for president in 2020. And I said, you're going to have to deal with this. And unfortunately, when you're out there all by yourself, standing on stage at the United States Air Force Academy, it is not a carefully manicured, carefully groomed place for the president to move around in. It's real world stuff. Does everybody fall down? Yeah. Have I fallen down on a bicycle? Yeah. Yeah, I have. Recently. I was trying to listen to a Steely Dan song, and for whatever reason, I was using my cell phone while I was riding a bike, thinking that, hey, no big deal. One, for the fact that I was wearing a baseball cap, my face would look dramatically different than it does right now. But the bill of the cap saved my face from exquisite damage. As it was, I shattered my nose. If it wasn't for the fact that I had an incredible plastic surgeon. If it wasn't for that, again, my face would look dramatically different now. Oh, yeah, the bike incident. Yikes. The most flattering thing out of that was is that some of my friends said, so you were just going to get your nose fixed and that was a cover? No, it wasn't a cover. I looked at my bike the other day and it's still got my blood all over it. Maybe I should do something about that. But I don't want to touch it right now because every time I move toward it, my wife, makes it abundantly clear that that's not something she wants me to do. So I guess the Honda Goldwing is now completely off the table. But then again, should it be? Should it be something that I very carefully look at? Yeah. Should this be something that the powers that be should be very careful in looking at? The answer is yes. I remember asking while President Biden was running for office in 2020, why isn't President Biden at his beach home in Rehoboth, sitting on his beautiful deck overlooking the ocean, sipping exquisite scotch, smoking a Cuban cigar, and talking about how brilliant and wonderful he was during his career? And that comes down to a two-word answer. What is that two-word answer? I bet you got it wrong. Fred asks, so the Harley is out? Yeah, the Harley's out. Yeah. And I know it's a Honda Goldwing, but it's not because I like buying imported stuff. It's because I like the fact that the engine is extremely low in the frame, and so is the center of gravity. And that makes for a very stable riding motorcycle. I won't buy a new one. I'll buy a used one so I don't actually hurt Harley or any of the other economy bikes. So anyway, that being said, thanks very much for joining us. Back in a moment. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 3 minutes. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. It's so hard to watch the President of the United States taking a spill. I just watched that video again. The sandbag that the president was pointing at was in an interesting position. He turned to his left and stepped off with his right foot in an unsure manner. That was not the foot next to the sandbag. His left foot may have dragged across it, which may have thrown his balance off, but still, at the end of the day, when he turned and stepped off with his right foot, that was an unsure step that happened right at the beginning of the event. This man is ill. The man is ill. And we need to recognize it. There's a headline on Fox News today that talks about that spill. That's why I was watching it, because it was another article about the same story. Biden's fall at Air Force commencement draws concern, good, and mockery, not good. This has been said before, time and time again. Time again, that what we have is we have a guy that is a victim of elder abuse. I got to be perfectly honest with you. It's getting more and more real every day. Like I said, this president should be enjoying his later years of life, looking out at that magnificent view out over the Atlantic from his home in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. That's what he should be doing. And that he was pushed into this comes down to two words. And what are those two words? In my humble opinion, those two words are Bernie Sanders. The Democrat Party, through the 2019 primary season, saw their frontrunner, Bernie Sanders, as a complete fake socialist, spewing Marxism, spewing socialism, spewing this, spewing that. all while never living in a true socialist country for any length of time whatsoever. He's a fake. Bernie Sanders is a fraud. Moreover, he was successful, which might tell you something about the shall we say, militant voters of the Democrat Party in the 2019 primary season. Most people just skip the primaries. They just do. It's easy to go to the church of your choice on Easter. It's tough going week after week after week. Well, that's kind of the situation of the primaries. Most people look at the primaries and see, well, what's going on? Well, that's all good. That's all fine. But most people just wait for the general election, having made their decision by watching the primary process, which means the people voting in the primaries are the ones that are the true believers. In the case of the 2019 primary season, the true believers were socialists. And so Bernie Sanders was out front. And the Democrat Party realized that if indeed Bernie Sanders was the nominee, they were going to go down in flames, very much like George McGovern did in the run-up to the 72 election. And so that's why Joe Biden was picked. It was the best choice they had at the time, according to their own ideas. And this is what we have. Got a lot of thinking to do before the 2024 election, don't we? This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in 3 minutes. You stay right where you are as we continue giving you the news, fair and honest, here on Friday. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Real news, honest and fair. Analysis, fact and bias, commentary, just opinion, and debate. It is the Wells Report. And so as we come to this particular day, I have to reference what we talked about yesterday, which was the left is losing. They are losing their fight. In the well-worn standard of be careful what you wish for, well, you reap what you sow. And finally, it's coming to a point where people are saying, wait a minute, you got to stop. And the latest time that happened was yesterday in Oakland, California. It was a community meeting. They voiced their frustrations with the city's rampant crime problem. Open Mind music owner Harry Wimmer told America Reports yesterday on Fox News that he's been a victim of smash and grab thefts and once scared off a person casing a car with a flashlight. What I see are a lot of people upset, and understandably so, because crime has been rampant in the time that I've been in the Rock Ridge neighborhood in Oakland, which is a beautiful, wonderful neighborhood. Victims of the city's crime spoke out during the committee meeting, while a couple of people talked a little bit about it, specifically Oakland Police Department Captain Jeff Thomason, interim chief of the Department of Violence Prevention, Kentrell Killins, also joined by District 1 Council Member Dan Kalb. Victims of the city's crime spoke out during the committee, while Kalb and Thomason tried to outline steps they're taking to address the issue. One attendee said, "Who wants to live like this?" Across the bay, one of the most beautiful cities in the world is covered with homeless encampments and feces. Another story that has escaped the reality. And what we end up seeing is we see this in many Democrat/liberal/progressive run communities. Crime dramatically up. Homeless dramatically tragic. Earlier this month, the city saw 100 robberies in a week, 50 taking place over a single weekend. This according to Oakland police statistics. The robberies that happened included acts like carjacking, shootings, and assaults. We experience on at least what I would say a weekly basis or a monthly basis at Oakland restaurant owner Adam Stemler, and it's something we're deeply concerned about. We're here to encourage people to get involved on the local level. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? It's not really a problem here in Fort Worth, Texas. But I will assure you that you can spend an awful lot of time on hold on the non-emergency numbers at the police department. Citywide, robberies have increased 7% from the same period last year. Last year was no bargain either. Authorities say they are alarmed to see more juveniles involved in crime. Wimmer said that smash and grab robberies and car theft are fundamentally the major problem in his neighborhood. Quote, there were pedestrians near my car. It was about closing time. There was daylight. It was like 10 seconds. So I was at the store saying, Monica, we need to get going. And that time there was a pop of a back window. They grabbed our laptop and they were gone in a matter of seconds. By the way, in the Bay Area, a lot of people have gone to taking everything out of their car and leaving their cars open to try to keep themselves from coming back to a broken window. So the criminal element is quick, it's nefarious, it's predatory, it takes a lot of eyes on the prize. In essence, it's the best deterrent that we've got. Well, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters? The police department budget has been cut. The police are afraid to enforce the law, lest they arrest the wrong person. Wrong person. The council member said he had just come from a budget workshop at City Hall. The current version of the budget shows over the next 2 years a total of 6 police academies and an increase in the number of officers. Great. What about the last 2 years? Wimmer said the crime problem is multi-tiered, will require more than just fixing police issues. Oh, really? The Oakland police force is per capita the smallest of a major city. It has a vast territory to cover. It really is a multi-tiered problem. And it's really problems with education, economic opportunity, along with police force issues. Well, let's talk about the economic opportunity. Are you going to invest in a community where you might find that your laptop's been stolen out of your car? Are you going to invest in a community in a retail sense where what you're doing is you're watching people walk in an organized way and walk away with your products? Which is it? Which is it? Would you do that? Would you invest in a city like that? The answer is no. So the economic opportunity of people investing in cities like that goes where? Elsewhere. That's where it goes. With less revenue because of fewer businesses, then the city begins to erode from a standpoint of finances. Fewer police, not more. Fewer city services, not more. And before you know it, you find yourself in a place like Detroit, where no one lives anywhere close to the city. It is literally a hollowed out center of a once thriving metropolis, because you simply couldn't live there. As Ronald Reagan famously said, you vote with your feet in the United States, and that's where people are finding themselves. And once again, it's because, well, you just can't arrest anybody that commits a crime. You can't interdict someone committing a crime in your own store, especially if you're an employee. If you're an employee and you try to stop somebody stealing the company stuff, well, you get yourself fired. You get yourself fired. It's outrageous. That's not the only way that the left is losing. There are other ways. And they all come right down to reality. Completely simple, straightforward reality. Target stores now in a situation where they're facing a revolt among their own employees. They're suddenly realizing that they have a major, major problem. And that major, major problem is going to continue to plague them until they get it fixed. Let me see if I can bring this up for you. Target employees, EMPLOYEES. Little technical mess there for a moment. Let's see. That was here. Where was it? I want to know where it was. Where is this article? It was there just a moment ago. By the way, in case you're wondering, Fox News' website is very dynamic. It changes as time goes by. It changes very, very quickly. I want to find this article for you, and that's why I'm taking the time to do it here. Please forgive me on this. But let me find out. Let me find out exactly what we're doing here. Let's see. Target employees revolt. Let's try that one. That's where I found it. Oh, here we go. Finally found it. All right. Sorry about that. Companies are failing workers, said a Target employee says on days of planned protest. Adam Ryan is a Target worker and liaison for the employee coalition Target Workers Unite. He said today that hourly wage earners have been forced to make an impossible choice during the coronavirus pandemic. That's an old story. That is not the one. Yeah, that's not the one. Doggone it. Why am I having this problem? Let me go back to this and let me do this. Dagnabbit. It was right there just a moment ago. Target stores. Let's see if that comes up. Here we go. All right. No, that was 10 days ago. Let's see. Target store employees. Dag nabbit, this is so embarrassing. I hate it when this happens. Yeah. Anyway, like I said, the left is losing the argument. They are losing the argument because they should lose the argument. What they have done is they have created, here we go. What they've done is they've created a company culture. What the left has created is a culture of unreality. Here we go. Many rank and file Target staffers are questioning if they belong at the retailer after a disastrous rollout of the LGBTQ Pride Month merchandising, leaving staffers on both sides of the issue upset at the company's high-powered decision makers, according to a well-placed insider. This according to Fox News. Our teams feel left behind. The vast majority of our team feels like decisions are being made that impact them. It doesn't matter which side you're on. Now you feel like people are making decisions without the best interests of us, the employees, and the company. Because people have made decisions for us that put us in difficult positions. There are a lot of folks that feel like, do we belong at Target? That question is being asked for the first time in a very long time. Target featured massive June Pride Month displays on an annual basis, but this year's merchandise caused problems before the celebration of LGBTQ even began. Female-style swimsuits used to make a male look more female, made waves on social media. A variety of products for children and ties to a satanic designer further irked critics. The Target insider spent nearly 2 decades at the company, previously told Fox News that the retail juggernaut was taking steps to avoid a Bud Light situation. Too late. All the watchers of the markets have dramatically downgraded Target. That happened today. And from what we understand, and I don't know whether you can believe this or not, they've lost some $12 billion in market value. So what he said was the LGBTQ Pride merchandise infuriated some customers. Target then confirmed adjustments were made to in-store Pride displays, with some items being removed altogether. Target said it was tamping down the Pride merchandising to keep employees safe, as rank-and-file staffers have been threatened and harassed because of the over-the-top displays. Being threatened by who? Are they being threatened by Pride militants? Are they being threatened by Pride militants who say, no, you've got to have that stuff right out in front of your children? Or are they being threatened by customers who aren't interested in shopping for politics at Target? They just look for the goods. Which is it? Whether you're on the right and you feel left behind at the beginning, or you feel like you didn't belong, and now if you're LGBTQ, you also have questions of whether or not you're welcomed anymore. This is what happens when you forget what you do for a living. You're a retail store. You provide products. You don't make political statements. If you want to run for political office, run for political office. If you're running a Target store, make sure the merchandise is there in good shape at good prices. Target's in trouble. By the way, they say, the insider said, this is the first time in our company's history that people on both sides of the question Target's commitment. The insider, who is devastated that innocent staffers have been forced to defend the big box store from angry customers on both sides of the issue, said employees inside Target stores have nothing to do with the decisions, and protesting will get you nowhere. Really? Protesting will get you nowhere? How come we see so much of it? Most rank-and-file employees were left in the dark about the changes, many not knowing Pride sections would be moved and the items would be pulled until they noticed it themselves. The decisions are made high above us. Staffers have no say. The insider noted that Target CEO Brian Cornell, who famously said woke capitalism is great for their brand, days before the Pride controversy erupted, doesn't have much to worry about. His predecessor, Greg Steinhoffel, received a golden parachute of over $60 million when he was shown the door in 2014. If Steinhoffel received that nearly a decade ago, the insider suggests Cornell would walk away with significantly more, regardless of any self-inflicted controversy. I'm an employee of a company. It's a small one. It's a local one. And as an employee, I work at a place. I work at a place where everybody cares about the company and its profit margin. Why? Because the leaders took us into a meeting and explained what was going on, refocusing the entire workforce on something because they felt that it was more important to include us than exclude us. You have to remember why you do what you do. And when you forget, you pay a very, very high cost. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report, which will return in 2 minutes. You're listening to the Wells Report, which will return in 1 minute. The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. One of the things that I have spent a lot of time doing is paying attention to the issues of how this government has damaged certain groups of people. There are people that claim grievance because of things that happened over a century and a half ago. And there are people who claim grievance because they have adequate and indeed righteous grievances. That group of people that I'm referring to are America's native indigenous population. Treaty after treaty, agreement after agreement, made by the United States government with the great nations of indigenous people they found here when they arrived from Europe and elsewhere. Set aside for profit, set aside for politics, set aside for societal convenience, over and over and over. The people that are now agitating for reparations because of something that they never experienced or never imposed or never were imposed on in that way, forget the fact that there are people here that are living with those treaty violations to this day and the way they've been treated by the United States government. And here's the latest version of that. The Biden administration is moving forward with a 20-year ban on new oil and gas leasing near an indigenous cultural site in New Mexico. This despite stark opposition from the Native Americans in that region. Interior Secretary Deb Haaland finalized the action today, which bans fossil fuel and mineral leasing within a 10-mile buffer zone around the Chaco Culture National Historical Park in northwestern Mexico. The ban ultimately amounts to a withdrawal of approximately 336,404 acres of public land from mineral leasing near the site some Native Americans consider sacred. Today marks an important step in fulfilling President Biden's commitment to Indian country by protecting Chaco Canyon, a sacred place that holds deep meaning for indigenous peoples whose ancestors have called this place home since time immemorial. The exceptional landscape in the greater Chaco region has profound cultural importance, said BLM manager, Bureau of Land Management Director, Tracy Stone Manning. Today's announcement marks an important step in ensuring indigenous voices help inform the management of public lands. The problem is that proposal has been met with fierce opposition from the nearby Navajo Nation. In 2021, Navajo Nation President Jonathan Nez and Vice President Myron Lizar penned a letter to President Biden warning it would have a devastating impact on tribal members who have a financial interest in drilling in the area. Last year, the San Juan County, New Mexico Board of Commissioners passed a resolution opposing the DOI administration proposal. While the DOI stated today the action would not impact existing leases or production on those leases, opponents of the buffer zone said it would directly make Indian-owned allotments worthless. In their 2021 letter, Nez and Lizar wrote that extracting fossil fuels from existing often requires horizontal lateral crossing of 2 to 4 miles of subsurface through federal land impacted by a ban. In an effort to reach a compromise, the Navajo Nation endorsed a 5-mile buffer zone floated by energy industry stakeholders. But in a 15-1 vote, the Navajo Nation Resource and Development Committee passed a resolution stating the tribe would oppose any buffer zone. The Navajo people need this money. This land is theirs. Arguably, all the land in this nation is theirs. Not just the Navajos. But the people we found have been treated in devastatingly destructive ways, and it continues to this day. Chaco Canyon is important, but you cannot set aside the fact that what this administration is doing is trying to kill fossil fuels. The question is, will they kill the Navajo Nation's future prospects for prosperity while doing so? How many people are we going to sacrifice on the altar of this vaporous, mystical, non-existent climate change issue? The Navajo going to be next? Is that what we're doing here? There are times when I think about going to Washington and doing something about this, because this is awful. What I would suggest is that the federal government find any of the treaties that were signed by the great Indian nations and the government of the United States and pick the ones that are, shall we say, most advantageous to all and start enforcing them. Of course, that would take an awful lot of land out of an awful lot of very famous Hollywood property owners' hands. But they should have never had that property in the first place, should they? How dare we treat these people this way? This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I want to thank you very much for being a part of our broadcast on Friday. Enjoy your weekend. I'll see you back again Monday for another edition of the Wells Report. All right. So there we go. Let's see here. Yeah. Not a good day for the chat room, huh? Yeah, not a good day for the chat room. The objective of the chat room is to have a reasoned, polite, even friendly discourse. Baiting each other is antithetical to that. I'm unhappy with this. The Wells Report is a reasoned discourse on the issues of the day. It is polite, it's cordial, it's friendly, it's professional. We need to focus on real issues, not petty arguments. And by the way, it's not difficult for me to tell the bullies in the room from those who are being bullied. And isn't it fascinating that the people doing the bullying often are completely oblivious to the fact that that's what they're doing? That's food for thought. Please consider it. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you on Monday. God bless all.